It's like the board game Discovering Ireland, except instead of a tiny little plastic car, your playing token is your bookshelf. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am talking you through all of the counties in Ireland from which I've read a book. For the majority of the counties, it's going to be a book that was set there, but there might also be some counties that I haven't thought of that I have read an author who grew up there or who was born there or who was from there. I've tried to be as explicit with this as possible. So if the county is actually mentioned by name, it goes in. If there is a town in that county that is mentioned by name, it goes in. This, for example, is why the Aisling series by Sarah Breen and Emer McLysaght, one of my favourite series of all time, doesn't feature in this because the county is not specifically named. It doesn't say if it is set in Laois, it doesn't say if it is set in Kildare. It could realistically be any of the counties in that area, but because they don't specifically say where it is, it can't count. There are 32 counties in Ireland, including the 6 that are in the north, and I have visited, I think, 29 of them. There's only a couple of them that I've never actually been to, and to be honest, the majority of those are in the north or a little bit closer to Dublin. I know that there's a couple in the Republic I've never been to, and I know that there is a couple in the north that I've never been to. But let's see how many of those I've travelled to with the help of my bookshelf. Of course, easiest county to tick off is Dublin. Half of the books that are set in Ireland are going to be set in Dublin, so there was absolutely no shortage of books that I could have put on this list. For Dublin, I have gone with Circle of Friends by MAEVE BINCHY. Benny and Eve, our two main characters, go to college in UCD, so they move to Dublin City, start studying in the city, and most of the activity of the book takes place within Dublin City itself. And I think as well, Knockglen, which is the fictional suburb of Dublin that they grew up in, is actually in County Dublin rather than being in County Kildare or County Wicklow. The next easiest one was Cork. I feel like Cork also features quite heavily in books, not just in the books that I've read, but in books that are set in Ireland as a whole. Cork is the biggest county in Ireland, so there is plenty of space for people to set books across. But for this one, I haven't gone for a real town, I haven't gone for Cork City itself, I've actually gone for a fictional town. I went for Asking for It by Louise O'Neill, which is one of my favourite YA books. It is incredibly hard-hitting. It follows a young woman named Emma who is very popular. She's very well liked by her classmates. Even though she's not a very nice person herself, I wouldn't say that she's a very likeable character. But when she goes to a party one evening in her town to celebrate a sports team that has done really well, Emma is the victim of a sexual assault. She is raped, and quite a lot of the book goes into a her versus them narrative and whose story are you going to believe. Next up is another one of Ireland's biggest counties, and that is Galway. Outside of the county that I grew up in, which is Waterford, Galway is my favourite place in the entire country. I absolutely adore Galway City. I haven't been there in such a long time. I definitely haven't been to Galway since I moved to Germany. But there is definitely going to be a time where I'm going to go back home and I'm going to just spend a weekend or a long week just taking in the atmosphere of Galway City. For Galway, I have gone with The New Policeman by Kate Thompson. This is set in an actual village called Kinvara, and it follows a young man named JJ who has just turned 15, and it's his mother's birthday, and he asks her what does she want for her birthday, and all she wants is time. Like a lot of us adults, she feels like she's running out of time. She feels like she doesn't have enough time to get everything that she wants to done, go all the places she wants to go to, see all the people that she wants to see. All of her family is starting to pass away because time is advancing. JJ discovers a portal to Tirnanog, which is the land of eternal youth. And I believe that the rest of the trilogy, which I haven't read yet, is about JJ's chronicles in Tirnanog and getting to grips with the kind of differences in time and time structure between our real world and Tirnanog. Right beside Galway is Mayo. This is another one of the bigger counties in Ireland, and this one is a kind of a real but not real book. I picked The Girl Who Came Home by Hazel Gaynor, and this is a fictionalised version of the Adrigul 14. The Adrigul 14 were a group of 14 people from a small Mayo village who all went on the Titanic in April 1912. Most of them didn't survive the trip, some of them did make it to New York, but the 14 of them have become kind of infamous in County Mayo, especially in Adrigul itself, and I know that there is a kind of a plaque in the village about them. So that kind of little connection made this such an interesting read for me, especially when it was kind of a fictionalized retelling of their lives, when it's a subject that I'm so interested in. Right at the top of Ireland, and one of our other biggest counties, is Donegal. I have read a couple of books from Donegal. I was kind of going through my Goodreads shelf and taking a look at where all the books that I had read were set, but the first one that came to my mind was Dancing at Lunasa by Brian Friel. This is a play. I studied it for my Leaving Cert back 10-15 years ago by this date. It's also a film which stars Meryl Streep and it stars Rhys Ifans. It is told from the perspective of Michael, a 7-year-old child who lives with his mother and her 4 sisters in a very small rural village in Donegal. The economic situation of the family is not going so well. They're not doing very well. Kate, the eldest sister, is the only one of the family who has got an income. She is a teacher in the local school. Michael's mother and I think one of the other aunts is a sewer or a knitter, and they kind of mend clothes for people in the community. The family's financial situation is stretched even thinner when Jack, who is Michael's uncle, comes back as a missionary from Uganda. He'd been there for about 20 years and he comes back to the family, and Michael's father is starting to come back into the picture as well. Another book that I studied for my Leaving Cert, which is set in Antrim, is Lies of Silence by Brian Moore. This one is set primarily in Belfast. It is set in the 1970s, so it is right at the height of the Troubles. And as far as I can remember, I obviously haven't read this since I did my Leaving Cert, so let's see how much of this I remember. It's about a hotel owner who is having an affair, and one evening a bomb is brought to his house where his wife is. He and his wife are held hostage, and then he kind of starts to be caught up in this whole world of the Troubles and of every side versus every side. I think that this is what this is about. I'm going to go back and check it over, and I'm going to see just how far wrong I was. Hi, editing Aoife here. That was actually not very far off. It is about a man who owns a hotel, but the bomb is not brought to the hotel. The bomb is put into his car, and he is then made by the IRA to bring the car to his hotel, which is where a Protestant clergyman is going to be holding a speech, and they want to kill him there. I didn't go too far wrong. From Derry, I have read Did You Hear Mammy Died by Seamus O'Reilly. This is Seamus's memoir of his life growing up as one of 11 children, all parented solely by his father after his mother passes away from breast cancer. It is so poignant, it is so heartbreaking at times, but also it is incredibly funny. Family sizes like this were quite common back in Ireland in the 1970s and 1980s, so while you don't really see it as much anymore, I'm only one of 2 children and I always wanted to have a really big family. Reading of Seamus having so many siblings kind of makes me happy that I only have the one. Back down to near to where I grew up, in Wexford, I read Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín. This is, again, a film which starred Saoirse Ronan and Donal Gleeson, and I think it came out in maybe 2015 or so. And something that really collected it to me is that, like Eilish in the book, I had also emigrated that year. I had moved to Wales that year to do my master's in Cardiff. So I felt like there was a big connection for me and Eilish in this book, that we were both going through new customs, we were going through new traditions, we were going through a new culture, we were trying to find new friends, form new relationships. And I really enjoyed this book. I also really loved the family connection between Eilish and her sister Rose and her mother, and the whole kind of thing that would have happened in the 1950s of a child moving away and then having to send money back home a little bit at a time just so that the family can keep surviving. One of the most recent books that I finished is set in Kildare, and that is Snowflake by Louise Nealon. This follows Debbie, who is 18 years old, and she is about to start college in Trinity in Dublin. And it's the whole kind of country girl moves up to the city, but it's not as explicit as that, because you do see some kind of areas where Debbie is a little bit more worldly than the other people that she's meeting. And then you do see other instances where she genuinely does seem so clueless and so kept back and so out of the world that these people are in. It also focuses on Debbie's family farm, on her mother, on the farmhand with whom Debbie's mother has a relationship, and Debbie's uncle, who is probably one of my favourite complex characters I've read so far this year. A book that book has gotten quite a lot of comparison to is set in Sligo, and that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. So many people are familiar with the story of Connell and Marianne, who are 2 secondary school students in Sligo, and they are on very different rungs of the social ladder in their school. Connell is a football player, he is very popular, he is really well liked. Marianne is much more quiet, she is much more studious, she is much more ignored by her peers. But they start to have a secret relationship with each other, and this also grows outside of the confines of their small town. It brings them to Trinity in Dublin, it brings them to Italy, I think it brings them to Sweden. And it also comes along with the trials and tribulations of being a young person in Ireland these days, of dealing with mental health issues, of suicide, of losing friends to suicide, of familial regret and familial expectations that you might be put under. I really enjoyed this book. It can be a little difficult to get into because of the lack of quotation, but I really enjoyed this one. I'm not like one of those huge fans of normal people, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Next up is The Letter Home by Rachael English, and this is set in County Clare, which is also kind of close to where I came from. And a lot of this story kind of focuses on the idea of the mother and baby homes that were rife in Ireland in the early to mid 20th century. I think the last mother and baby home in Ireland shut in 1996, which is in the lifetime of quite a lot of people who are going to be watching this channel. And the idea of those has always been terrifying, that there are young women who may have been impregnated through rape, who may have just accidentally fallen pregnant, who have fallen pregnant out of wedlock, who may have been with the father of the baby for years and years, but because there's no ring involved, it's seen as a scandalous thing. One of the main characters in this book is adopted from one of these mother and baby homes and then brought away to Boston. But in the small town of County Clare where she was born, where she was grown up, a journalist who also grew up in the town has come back to start a story about the local mother and baby home. A kind of a small mention here is for Kerry, and the book that I'm going to choose is Grown Up by Marion Keyes. There is a mention of a kind of a 50th birthday party for one of the characters, and it is held in the Europa Hotel in Killarney, which is one of Ireland's 5-star hotels. It is incredibly lavish. It is big bucks kind of spending. It's the kind of thing that you only do for like a big event. And Marion really captured the idea of this hotel so well. She really captured the beauty of Killarney town itself. Killarney is one of my other favourite places in the country. My family and I have gone to Killarney on bank holiday weekends quite a lot. So it's a place that I was very familiar with even before reading the book, but while I was reading it, I really felt like I was back in town. Next up is MAEVE, and for this one I have gone with The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. On the very first page of The Wonder, Liv comes into the small town of Athlone, which is almost bang in the centre of Ireland, to be brought to the family where a young 13-year-old named Anna has been surviving without food for about 2 months and nobody can figure out how. They think it is a miracle sent by God. They think that it is some kind of a miraculous thing that has happened to this child, and Liv is sent to figure out what's really happening. Again, this one has just recently been made into a movie starring Florence Pugh, who is one of my favourite actors at the moment. So if you have read this book, or if the idea of it seems like something that you really want to go and check out, first of all, I implore you to read the book, but then go and watch the movie. It is stunning. The most recent county that I have ticked off is Roscommon, with the book Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. It is a phenomenal book, and it follows the life of Sally Diamond, who, when her father passed away, put him into the family farm incinerator because what he told her was to just put him out with the rubbish when he had died. Sally takes this a little bit too literally, and her literal interpretation of this catapults her into notoriety around the country, because not everything with Sally's life is as it seems, and her origin story and her upbringing may not have been the idyllic life that a child deserves. Those are the counties from which I have read some books. Of course, there are others that I know I have got books that are set in. For example, I have got Angela's Ashes, which is set in Limerick. I have got either All I Shall Know or The Spinning Heart. Both of them are by Donal Ryan, but they're both set in Tipperary. And I've also got a copy of The Amusements by Angela Flannery, which is set in my own county of Waterford. Surprisingly, not one that I have read a book from yet. How many of the states or the counties of your country do you think you have read a book that is set in? If you'd love to leave me a comment but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me the shower mark emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.